We've all seen photos in the media of uniformed officers unloading hundreds of kilos of drugs. Maybe a record seizure intercepted at sea and brought to shore. But what if these cops were instead working for drug smugglers and not preventing crime, but committing it? Don't miss this episode of In the Chill of the Night, where we expose the truth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In the Chill of the Night, episode number 20. I'm here with my old pal, George Belsky, and our special guest tonight, Carlos Canino, ATF ever special agent. Tonight, Carlos is going to talk to us about an undercover case that's a bit unusual called Operation Part-Time. Most of the time, undercover agents work on bad guys. This time, this undercover agent works on good guys who turned out to be bad guys. He'll tell you the story. So without further ado, let's go. Welcome, Carlos. Welcome, George. How we doing tonight, fellas?
Doing great. Pleasure to be here with my buddy and good friend Carlos. Again, I met him on my first day in ATF in Miami. Been a mentor and a friend and just an all around dynamite agent and a great leader. Never forgot where his cuffs were, even though he moved up pretty high in the food chain. So it's pretty happy to be here.
A better testimonial you can't ask for, Carlos.
No, appreciate it, Pete. Georgie, good seeing you again, pal.
Hey.
And I know Ray, my buddy Ray Gadetti is behind the controls working. It's a pleasure to be on. But Pete, before we start, and I'm glad Ray's on, Pete, I swear to God, if you yell at me, because every time we talk, which is a couple of times a day, you end up yelling at me. So if you yell at me, I swear I'm going to your house
Tell
and
George.
I'm going to burn your tomato plants down.
Tell George. You tell it to George. And everybody pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Hey, I'm going to step out, but one, I'm really happy that you joined us. And number two, he yells at me a lot too, so I feel your pain.
You guys piss me off. So listen, Carlos, tell us the story, man.
So, this case is interesting. I was an agent in the Miami Field Division in Puerto Rico, right? Puerto Rico is part of the Miami Field Division. And so I was working. This was the end of 2004, the beginning of 2005. An ATF task force officer, Puerto Rico Police Department task force officer, came into the office one day and said, "Hey, I have information from this informant about cops doing drug rips. We need to interview the guy." So we brought him in, sat him down, interviewed the guy. Say, "Can you set up a meeting with these guys?" And he said, "Yeah, no problem." So we set up a meeting for mid-January, late January of 2005. I'm the undercover agent. I go to that meeting with that informant. We're at this bar not too far from the airport in Puerto Rico. And we're meeting with these guys. And one of the guys keeps getting up and going to the bathroom. He keeps getting up and going to the bathroom. I'm kind of, why is he doing this? Anyway, it was a get to know you type of meeting, right? So when we leave, I walk away, right? This is a meeting. This is the meeting prior to this, about a month prior to this. So I get up, leave, walk away, right? do my counter surveillance. I get back in my car, right? Doing my counter surveillance, looking. Anyway, I get to the office, and Orlando Felix was he was a senior supervisor in Puerto Rico, calls me into his office, and he says, "Hey, we just had a blue on blue. The three bad guys you were meeting with, one of them is a Puerto Rico Department of Corrections. He was a case manager. The other two guys are legit bad guys, right? But so our informant got in with, right? They didn't know who he was our informant. He met up with these guys, and that's how it started. So what happens is, right, we now have a blue on blue. I wasn't privy to this meeting, but right, ATF leadership and the Miami Field Division met with Puerto Rico PD. They came up with a plan. The plan was, right, we don't work the bad guys that they're already working with. We can work a different set of bad guys, right? Because I forgot to say, one guy was not at that meeting. Anyway, our informant reached out to the bad guy that wasn't at that meeting. We set up another meeting, this time with an unwitting informant, and then that's how this thing starts, where I meet them, and then he introduces me to that photo that you put on February 21st. That's the initial meeting with two, at the beginning, is two corrupt Puerto Rico Police Department officers.
So what do these guys want from you, and what do you want from them in this scenario?
Right. So the scenario is that I'm a drug trafficker coming from Miami, and I want police protection, right? I want to be able to move my cocaine. I want to transit my cocaine through Puerto Rico, and I want it to be protected by uniformed police officers.
And they're keen to do that, allegedly, right?
They jumped at the chance, like you wouldn't believe, which was extremely disheartening, right? You know how it goes, right? When somebody comes into your office and alleges that guys that carry badges are dirty, your heart sinks, and you don't want it to be true. But you have to do your job, and you have to investigate. And right, this happened to be true.
So now at the beginning, you said that some of the information that you had was that these guys were doing drug rips, and for the edification of the listeners, they were ripping off drug dealers and then distributing the drugs somehow or another. Were you not afraid that you were going to be the victim of a drug rip here?
I was not, because of the and I'm not going to go in, right? I'm not going to go into the techniques,
exactly. That's fine.
Tactics that we use to
skip it. Go ahead.
Right. So no, I wasn't worried. I was pretty confident in our techniques and practices that we could do this without them wanting to rip me.
So take us through it.
So that picture, right? February 21st, we meet at Lupe's restaurant, which is right there in Isla Verde, Puerto Rico, which is right by the airport.
Which one is you?
I'm the guy with the red sleeves and the blue with the back to the camera. The guy on my left is one of the corrupt police officers. The guy directly in front of me, the heavy-set guy, he's an unwitting informant. The guy with the red hat is a corrupt police officer. And the guy to my right is the confidential informant. That confidential informant had just gotten out of Puerto Rico State Prison after 24 years for a homicide. He swore to me up and down that he never committed that homicide, that he was framed by police officers, and that's why he came forward when he heard about police corruption. That guy and a whole lot of them were let out by mistake. There was a clerical error, and Puerto Rico DOC paroled a lot of these guys. Well, they started recalling them once they realized what had happened. Well, this guy was already working for us, so we had to go. We had to go to Puerto Rico Department of Corrections, and very delicately tell them that we weren't sending this guy back. He was working for the feds, and so they agreed to a lifetime of probation or parole for this guy. Right, so this guy did 24 years for a murder he says he didn't commit, but while he was in the prison, he ran one of the major gangs there. So this guy was a major shot caller who had a huge reputation in prison and a huge reputation on the street. So which was great for my undercover persona.
So put this in context for us. What do these guys that you're using for protection of your operation? How big do they think this operation is? What kind of a context can you put it in? What kind of money do they think is involved? What kind of money are you leading them to believe is involved? So we get a sense that what the stress level is here for everybody.
So for each load, I was paying them $4,000 a piece to move. I think it was 20 or 30 kilos a load. From point A to point B. The total conspiracy was 340 kilos of cocaine, 30 kilos of heroin. That was the total amount for the conspiracy against all of the police officers, which were 5 in total.
You got quick math on that? What kind of money we're talking about? George, you got your calculator, George?
Yeah.
What
not happening.
was interesting during this, and George will know, and you guys will know what I'm talking about. So when this case cooks off, because it was a police corruption case, the standing order at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Puerto Rico was that the FBI would take the lead. That didn't go over well in the ATF office. So the special U.S. attorney, who was the former U.S. attorney, Guillermo Hill, had been brought back out of retirement to head up the federal strike forces. He's a legendary federal prosecutor in Puerto Rico, and he and I had a good relationship. So when he finds out that we have this case, he calls me into his office. And he says, "Hey, you ever do a police corruption case before?" I said, "Yeah, I worked an undercover case in Miami on a dirty customs inspector." And he says, "Okay, this afternoon I want you to bring your team up here." So after lunch, we brought everybody up to his office, and he gives us a doctoral level class on how to conduct a proper police corruption investigation. I should have taken notes because I would have had a doctor's degree by now. It was fantastic. And then he said, he went to the U.S. attorney and said, "Hey, I want these guys to be the lead." So he says, "Carlos, do me a favor, call the FBI corruption case, get a liaison from the FBI to work with you on this." So I called over. The FBI sent 2 agents over. I wasn't in on this meeting, but they spoke with my supervisor. My supervisor came out and said, "Hey, they think we're a bunch of clowns." So they said, "Just keep us informed," right? They'll send somebody over. So talking about luck, right? And I'll make a statement after this. They sent a brand new FBI agent to Puerto Rico. He was a former cop in California, became an FBI agent. They sent him to Puerto Rico. They put him in a corruption squad because he was new. Right? He hadn't built up any relationships yet. I don't think that the guys in the squad liked him very much. So they said, "Hey, go with those guys over there, the land of the misfit toys, and go work with them." So we brought him over. We gave him a proper briefing. And he said, "Hey, how much money you guys need?" And I said, I don't know, 50,000, I guess, to start. He says, I'll be right back. He comes back an hour later with $100,000, and he tells me, hey, Carlos, when this runs out, call me, and I'll bring you another 100,000.
Your new best friend.
He was Courtney Sharn he was the best thing that could happen to us. He was fantastic, great investigator. He fit right in. He should have been an ATF agent.
Tip of the hat. Tip of the hat.
Carlos.
Yes, George.
So let's go back. This is late 04, early 05. How long have you been on the job?
At this time, I had been on almost 15 years.
Okay, and I know because I met you on my first day. You had a lot of experience doing the home invasion investigations. Really, the Miami Field Division kind of, if they didn't invent it, they certainly perfected it and made the wheel a whole lot rounder in those days of doing those home invasion investigations. Were you part of the enhanced undercover program at this point, or were you just doing it because you knew how to do it?
No, I was a original member of the enhanced undercover program, and like I was telling Pete, I'd love to sit here and tell you that Joe undercover guy, but we Inspector Clouseau'd our way through this case, right? And frankly, guys in my generation that came on in 1990, all we were trying to do was replicate what Pete's generation had already done, right? Yeah. Everybody wanted to, I wanted to be Eddie Benitez and Ariel Rios and Dominic Prolifone and Alex Diatri and Smiley Rodarte and these guys, Carlos Torres, right? I just wanted to be what they were. And that's how I got involved. And, I most of the time when I was doing an undercover deal, in the back of my mind, I would think these guys I can't believe these guys are so stupid. They don't think I'm a federal agent almost every time, but hey man, it worked, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we sat down with the special task force prosecutor. He's now taking this case because you were going to be engaging in, obviously illegal activity. Did you have to get like permission letters from them that said, hey, you're allowed to do certain stuff? Or what were some of your boundaries on doing this?
Yeah, I don't believe we got any. And obviously, right, it's a police corruption case, so it goes all the way to the top at ATF, and it goes all the way to the top to Maine DOJ to get the blessing. But we were running this like we would run a game on anybody else, right? And it's what's funny, George, and talking about not seeing 30,000 foot picture as a street agent. At the end, I wanted to do a home invasion on these guys, right? And Scott Adams says, "Hey, genius, how's it gonna look when the ATF SRT kills 5 Puerto Rico police officers?"
Yeah,
right. That could have been an outcome because you know how those cases go. So I said, "You're right." Also, right, relationships. I had a great relationship with my boss at the time, who was Jose Oquendo. There was respect and trust there. I had a great relationship with Chris Pelletier, who was our ASAC, right? He trusted me. So I did not get a lot of pushback, right? I got some guidance to say, Carlos, these are the guardrails, right? You've been around 15 years. You've done a bunch of this stuff already. Just stay within the guardrails. But those relationships proved to be very fruitful for me because I wasn't worrying about the admin stuff, and I wasn't worrying about if it went bad, are these guys going to abandon me, right? They just gave me room, and they gave me all the help and assistance that our team needed.
Yeah. So what was the investigative strategy on on these guys? What was the main goal?
So it worked like this, right? So the guy on the left was an unwitting informant. He had a couple of, drug points there on the kind of in the Arecibo area of Puerto Rico, which is like mid-island on the north coast, right? He brings me the guy to the right. He brings me Omar, and Omar recruits Carlos Oliveras, who, by the way, was an NCO in the 10th Mountain Division prior to him being a police officer in Puerto Rico, right? So the dude had skills, right? So Jamil is the unwitting informant. The reason I kept him around was because he was like the comfort animal for these two guys, right? As long as he was around, they felt comfortable, which was fine because I want them to feel comfortable. And a matter of fact, he pled guilty. He was looking at, right, they want to put him in the Wayback Machine. Thing about him was he was a single parent who had two severely mentally handicapped kids, right? He was the only breadwinner in the family. Besides being a dope dealer, he also worked at a slaughterhouse. I could have cut him out before we did any deals, right? And he wouldn't have caught anything in a conspiracy, really. I mean, minimal role. I just kept him around to make everybody else feel comfortable. So before I went to trial, I went to the judge and I said, Judge, I would recommend probation on this guy, and here's why, right? And the judge did so. So he got, instead of him doing a boatload of time like these guys got, the judge gave him 10 years federal probation.
So, Carlos, which one of those guys, if any, were you most uncomfortable around?
The guy that if it had gone bad, the guy that was going to catch it in the face first was the guy on the bottom left. Right. So here was the deal. They would meet me in a parking lot. I would give them a burner phone, right? I would give them a burner phone and I would give them the keys to a rental car. I would tell them, hey, follow me. They would follow me to point B, where another undercover agent would be waiting for me. I would call that undercover agent. He would drive in with the sham kilos. I would get out of my car. I would go to the trunk of that car, and I would transfer the load into the police vehicle that these two guys were driving. And then I would tell them, meet me at point C, follow me to point C, where once I got there, I would call in a third undercover agent. He would come. He would drive up. I would get out of my car. I would get out of my car, call the cops. They would drive in with the load. They'd pop the trunk. I would take that load, put it in the other agent's vehicle. He would drive away, and I would tell these guys, meet me back at the original staging area, where they would then give me back the keys to the rental. They would give me back the burner phone, and then I would pay them $4,000 a piece for the trip. That's how it worked. And we did a total of, with these two guys, we did a total of 5 of these type of trips. One of them, we unloaded a boat, and it was 330 kilos, 300 which were cocaine and 30 kilos of heroin. And
Wow.
we did that with 4 of these guys. Recruited another set of cops, so there was 4 total.
Man, logistically, what are we talking? How big of a crew was backing you up on this?
So great question, George. Right, logistically, this is where I talk about the trust and respect and the good working relationship with the chain of command. They did not blink. Anything I asked for, they didn't blink. So we had 40 people do this, right? Because we did not want to see, these guys are cops, right? They know what we know. So we did not want them to ever see the same car twice, right? So we had a cover team at point A. We had a cover team at point B, and we had a cover team at point C. So that was 30 right there. And then we had a follow team of 10 with a plane. And so these guys, the rule was, don't even put eyes on these guys. You guys are there in case these guys divert from somewhere and they rip open those packages, or they stop somewhere and they pick up more people or whatever. Right, you're there as you're there as a QRF. So it was 40. It was 40 people just to do one of these deals. It was a huge undertaking.
Wow.
So with all of these carefully laid plans, you mentioned earlier that you wound up with a couple of Inspector Clouseau moments. Do you want to talk about one, or do you want to let it lay?
So by the way, this picture right here, this is when we first met. This is the first deal. I walked up on them, and they said, "Hey, lift up your shirt." Right? My pistol. I had a pistol. It wasn't. I had a pistol in the car, but I'm wired right there, right? And I hid the. I'm not going to go into what I was wearing for a wire and stuff like that, but right. I mean, I could lift. The reason I did that, it was in anticipation for if these guys wanted to get cute and do that, right? But so the night before we met to do that 300-kilo deal at that little marina, not too far from the airport, I brought down Special Agent Richie Zayas with me, right? Because Richie is probably one of the, if not the best UC at ATF. So I wanted to be with him to make me feel more comfortable, and plus I also wanted another gun with me, in case it went to shit. We'd have two guns there instead of one. So I knew the general manager at a hotel. I'm not going to say which hotel it is. And I called him and I told him, hey, I need 3 rooms. I need 2 rooms side by side, and I need one way down the end of the hallway. Put them under this name. And I gave him my undercover name. He says, no problem. So we go to the hotel, set the hotels up, right? We wire up the rooms. We meet the bad guys that night. They're going to stay in the hotel because we're going to get up at dark 30, go to that marina, unload that boat, right, and do the thing. So when Richie and I meet with them that night, right, they were asking a lot of questions. And I'll tell you a funny story that happened there. But anyway, so I don't know if they went drinking or whatever. Anyway, we wake up the next morning, and I get up, and you know how at hotels, when you're checking out that morning, they slip the bill underneath the door. So I get up, I walk over to the door, pick up the piece of paper, and I look at the bill, and it has my undercover name, but right underneath it, it says ATF.
Oh, no.
So all the rooms are under my name to include the room that these guys slept in the night before, right?
Oh.
So me and Richie are looking at each other. It's like, hey, what do we do? Right? So he goes, hey, go outside, look over the railing, you see if they're down there. So I open up, I look, we're on the 9th floor. I look down, and these guys are downstairs eating breakfast in full police uniform. So I come back, I go, hey, they're eating breakfast. And we're like, well, what do you want to do? And it's like, well, if they thought we were the police, they would have came here in the middle of the night, and tried to kill us, or they would have left. Right? So they don't know anything. So he goes, hey, walk down to their room and see if the bill's there. And I'm like, you walk down to the other room, right? So I walk down to the room because I look down again. I go, okay, no one's in the room. I open the door because I had the keys. I open the door, and there was the folio right there laying face down, undisturbed, right? So I knew they hadn't looked at it, but I picked it up, and it said the same thing like the last one. Had my name, my undercover name, with ATF underneath it. I mean, that's right. I mean, talking about a huge
Yeah.
operational security faux pas, George.
Right. Oh man.
Well, what did you do with the folio?
I took it, put it in my pocket.
I said, hey, fellas, I got your room. It's all covered.
So that meeting the night before was when these two other cops came, right? And the guy from the 10th Mountain Division didn't know them. And so he tries to punk them out. And he kind of manned up on them and kind of stood on. He was a big kid, right? So he kind of stood over these two guys and started pointing, saying, hey, we all know each other. We've done business together. I don't know you guys. I don't know what you bring to the table, but I know what he brings, and he brings it. And like he is literally on top of this kid. And so he stands up, and now they're facing each other, and poor Richie's in the middle.
Oh, geez.
Right? And everybody's armed. These guys are armed, right? And I'm sitting there going, I'm praying. I'm going, please let this be on tape, right? This is the best undercover tape that's ever been made, right? Two sets of cops kind of going at each other. And guess what? It didn't work. It came out on audio. It didn't come out on video.
Oh.
It was awesome. It was awesome. And I'm thinking, again, right? I'm thinking, man, if this breaks bad, right? If this breaks bad, who's the first guy I'm going to shoot in the face, right?
Yeah. And who do you call? You know,
right.
you're in a gunfight with uniformed police. Who do you call?
Right.
You know, goodness gracious.
And how are you going to convince the real cops that come who the good guys are and the bad guys are?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. So it was, that was the thing about this. I think there's a picture there, you know, when we were at the dock, and I apologize because the videos didn't come out, right? So go back. So right, you know, top left-hand corner right there, right? This is a public marina right by the airport in Puerto Rico. Matter of fact, the mounted unit and the canine division of Puerto Rico Police Department is about a nine iron away from where these guys are walking, uniformed policemen with wheelbarrows to unload 330 kilos of sham cocaine and sham heroin. When we were walking back, when the thing was offloaded and we were walking back, me and Richie, these guys were in front of us, right? And this is kind of an out-of-the-way place. And I go, hey, Richie, when we get off this dock and we hit dry land, they have 330 kilos of cocaine and heroin, right? That's millions and millions of dollars, right? I go, they don't need us. Right? They don't need us. So if we're about to get into it, get ready, because once we hit dry land, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen in about 30 seconds. So when we hit dry land, I was just focused on what these guys were doing. I looked to my left, and Richie boogied to the left, and he was smart, right? He went to get a position of cover, right?
Yeah.
I'm an idiot, and I followed him. I was right in the middle of all of them unloading the stuff, which was kind of stupid. Again, Inspector Clouseau in it, right? Tactically, that was not the best place to be, because, I mean, they could have popped me in the head, left me right there. The stuff was already in the cars. They just could have drove away. But fortunately for me, they didn't.
Where'd they get the wheelbarrows from? Are those the marinas wheelbarrows, or do they bring their own wheelbarrows?
No, they were right there. Right, all of a sudden I look, and I'm like, hey, let's use these.
Yeah, the marina probably provides them for the boat owners and stuff to bring stuff down.
What's funny is when we were unloading these things, we put them in the big, thick, hefty garbage bags that you use for leaves. You know, the real thick ones. And one of the undercovers, Edwin Colon, was in the boat, and he was handing me one of the packages, and right, it was wet, it was humid. I almost dropped the thing in the water.
Oh.
Right? Joe Undercover almost drops, a packet of, I think there were we had 10 of them, so there were 30 kilos apiece, right? So I almost dropped 30 sham kilos of cocaine into the bay.
So after you offload the boat, did you have another one of those roving, bogus deliveries, and they
Correct.
just
So
went along?
from there, we went to a Home Depot parking lot, and they parked. One of the undercovers showed up in the 15 person Econoline van. We pulled right up. We used the carts, the Home Depot ones, the flat ones, the big ones where you put all that stuff on. We went, grabbed those, put 300 sham kilos on top of those, and we walked right across the parking lot, loaded them up to a van, and drove away. This is broad daylight, right? No one's paying attention. Or if they were, they weren't saying anything. But again, right, these guys are uniformed policemen, right? And the reason this thing worked was if they took a stop and they're in uniform, right? Any cop, or you guys were both road cops, you're going to walk up on them. Hey, how you doing, fellas? Oh, I didn't know you were on the job, right? Get back in his car and leave.
Yeah. Wow.
What's the big climax? How do we set the big climax up? Or what was it?
One last story here with this. On this deal, we were talking about recruiting more people and setting up the next load. And this was I was in an outlet mall just outside San Juan. And so while this is going on at this outlet mall, I'm the guy with the light blue shirt next to that white pole. Right, the informant is sitting on a bench. The guy next to me is a cop, and the guy in the white hat is one of the cops and the unwitting. Anyway, during this deal, while I'm standing there, I look up and I see a friend of mine who is a former Puerto Rico police officer, former Bureau of Prisons corrections officer in LA. That's where I met him when I was an agent in LA. And he had left BOP and went back to PR to open up his own private investigator business. So while I'm sitting there, I look up and he's walking directly at me with his teenage daughter. Right? So he's going to walk into a deal with, he knows I'm an agent. Obviously, he knows these guys are cops, right? Because the guy in the white shirt, those are his police pants on. He just got off of work. He just took off the blue shirt, right? So, I mean, it's going to be evidently clear to him that guy is also a cop. So I'm sitting, this is not going to go good. And as he's walking towards me and I'm dying a little bit at a time, at the very last second, he turns off to the right and goes into one of the stores. But I thought, this is it. This is going to get real bad real quick right here. All right, so the big ending here, Pete, is I am driving to work. Oh, no. Before that, we recruit more cops as a result of that deal. We're going to go meet in a different place. While I'm there, my cover team, number one, it was my fault, right? Because it was the wrong place to have a deal. It just wasn't right. And I realized that when I'm sitting there going, we stand out like sore thumbs here, right? These guys are cops. They're going to know something's up. So as these guys are driving up, I am giving one of these real quick. I just went like this real quick to one of the cover team guys. I just went like that. Well, these cops saw that and they smelled a rat.
Oh,
They dropped phones. They dropped everything. So I sent the informant back and he's like, oh no, something's wrong. He was giving people signs and he goes, yeah, he saw you guys. He thought there was counter surveillance. He didn't want you guys showing up. So he did this, but these guys ain't stupid. Right. And so that was the end. They wouldn't meet with me anymore. So we were dead in the water. So now, right, we got to start trying to indict them, and right, that doesn't happen overnight, right? I mean, that takes time. So as we were working that, I'm driving to work one morning. The news comes on. It's a news conference with the sack of the FBI in Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rico police superintendent. They're having a press conference. They had a police corruption case. Guess what? They started talking about tactics and techniques, right?
Oh,
On how they did that. Well, guess what? Those guys, remember I told you Courtney Sharn was our guy?
yeah.
Well, when we were having all that success, they asked him, hey, how you guys structure your deal? So Court told them how we structured it. So they did it exactly the same way, and they was starting to have success, right? Well, they gave that up at this news conference, and guess what? The cops were listening to that news conference. So now we have to go and send a rescue team to go grab the informant, right? Because we thinking these bad guys are going to go and whack him, right? I got to go into hiding. My brother, who was a federal probation officer in Puerto Rico, kind of looks like me, right? So we had to put him in hiding until we could get these guys into custody, which was about, right? It took a few days because we told them, hey, we have to arrest these guys by complaint. We don't have time to get everything in order to do an indictment because, right? I mean, we got to get these guys locked up so we can move about freely. And so they agreed to that, and we arrested them by complaint. And all we did was just call them in. They came to the police station and they were arrested.
Now, what were these guys? Were these guys street cops? Did they have indoor assignments? These guys are out every day locking people up for different crimes and stuff.
That's right. So these guys were just regular patrolmen. The first two of them, they were, like mid-island. I didn't have to worry about them. When this guy right here and the guy below, their precinct was less than a mile from my house.
Oh.
Matter of fact, I came out of my apartment one day, and these guys were on the street corner by the Walgreens having a coffee or a Coke or something like that. I almost had a heart attack. And so we had to call the Puerto Rico Police Department and get these guys transferred away from the San Juan metro area so I could move around, right? As it was, I really wasn't going into the office at regular hours, right? I would go in at night and I would take the service elevator because our office is where the U.S. Attorney's office is at. So, right, I mean, Puerto Rico is kind of small, right? So there was a lot of OPSEC issues and logistics and stuff like that to try to be as safe as you can.
So what happens next? I'm sorry, George. Go ahead.
How many hours of electronic surveillance do you have on this total, do you think?
Oh, I was looking at over the weekend. I was looking at the court transcripts. It looks like a Yellow Pages.
Golly!
Did you have to transcribe all the recordings?
You know how it goes, Pete. Right? Everybody, hey, all right. Everybody thinks undercover is what you see on TV. It's glamorous and stuff like that. It's a pain in the ass.
They didn't have a vendor do that for you.
No, there was no vendor. It was me.
Oh, jeez. What a pain in the ass.
Right? It's hard. No, you know what? We did. We had to get a vendor. But again, right, Court Sharn helped us out because I think the FBI had a vetted.
Of course they do.
Because it was a police corruption case, right?
Right.
So we were able to hire them.
But you still had to probably verify it.
Absolutely. You got to go over every single one of those transcripts. And hey, right, these are police corruption cases. They're going to trial for the most part.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we went to trial, a great trial, right? I think I was the first ATF agent in history to call a sidebar from the witness stand. Right? So what happens is, again, Pete, right, talking about transcripts. On the first transcript, right? Again, Inspector Clouseau. On the first transcript, I forgot to black out the informant's real name.
Oh.
Ooh.
Right? So when jury's seated, everybody's ready to go, right? The U.S. attorney hands me the transcript book. He's getting ready to play the tapes. I open the book, right? Now, we've been prepping for trial for months, right? First page out, it's the informant's full name, right? So, as you guys know, it's against ATF policy to out an informant unless you have permission, right? So I'm sitting there, the U.S. attorney, great guy, Ernesto Lopez was a trial attorney. He's passed away. He was the best. He's the best. So Ernesto sits there. He fixes his tie right, sets everything up. He starts ready for direct. And I look at him, and he knows something's up, and he's looking at me like, what's this maniac about to do, right? And I look over at the judge, and I said, Judge, can we have a sidebar?
No way.
Sort of guy. And the judge kind of looks over her glasses like, are you serious? And she goes, okay, right? So everybody goes up. I get up from the witness booth there. I walk up to the judge. I said, Judge, I've made a mistake. I've clearly identified the informant here. On cross, the defense obviously has seen this, right? They're going to ask me who the informant is. They're going to ask me his name. I go, by ATF policy, I can't divulge that information unless I have direct permission. So I go, this will take me 2 minutes. Let me go make a phone call outside to Miami, explain what happened, and I'll have permission. So she goes, go ahead. So I went outside, called my ASAC, told him what happened. He goes, go ahead. And so I came back in. I said, Judge, we're ready to go. And right, I had to out him, right? But again, right. Hey, look, I had almost 15 years on the job at this time, right? I had done a lot of undercover, right? I had been teaching at the academy. I mean, this was talking about rookie mistakes, right? Again, attention to detail.
There's a million details, though, and people don't understand that. There's a million.
So these guys end up going to trial. One guy pleads guilty; he gets 10 years. The rest of these knuckleheads, they want to go to trial. They got hammered. They got hammered. They got like 65 years. But there was a jury issue, and on appeal, they got a retrial. This is years down the line. And so the original assistant U.S. attorney on this, Ernesto Lopez, had passed away. And they said, hey, would you mind if we just give these guys 15 years? And I said, no, I don't, right? They've done enough. They ended up getting 65 years is life. These guys were in their late 20s, early 30s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were going to do life. So they ended up doing, I think they're all out now, just recently out. They've been out 3 or 4 years, but it was a learning experience, right? You think after 15 years doing a lot of this stuff, you think you know a lot. There's always something to learn.
Carlos, were you the case agent as well as the lead undercover?
I was.
Yeah, we had talked about that in a previous episode. We had Lou Velosi on, and we were talking about, as a boss, that was one of the mistakes I made, was letting my lead undercover also be the case agent. And it's just one of those things where you're trying to focus on so many things from a tactical perspective, but then you got to prepare it for trial and do all that. It's a lot. So it's easy to see, how you make that mistake.
Yeah. And right, again, I was fortunate. We had a lot of senior ATF agents in Puerto Rico at that time with a lot of street time, which was great, right? Because, and I mean, the whole office was involved. I was a case agent because I pulled the case number,
Yeah.
But this was talking about a team effort. This was literally all the groups in the office, right? We had 3 groups in Puerto Rico, all 3 groups, and every single task force officer was involved in this.
there was some cultural pressure within the organization back then to be the case agent and the undercover on your own case, rather than become what they remember. They would refer to somebody as an undercover fox, where all you did was undercover work
Right.
for other people. And at the time, back then, it was somewhat frowned upon, especially when the evaluation of your work depended upon your ability to lead and sort of manage the investigation, the entire investigation, rather than one investigative tactic like undercover. So it took a while. I guess it took a while to shed that as ATF became more deeply involved in long-term undercover cases. The special undercover programs, the backstopping. I mean, when I did this work there, the way you backstopped yourself, you went to the motor vehicle department and you talked to some inspector that into taking your picture and giving you a license with a phony address. That was your backstop. I mean,
Right.
It wasn't.
It was, yeah, you're right, Pete. But and I'm an amateur ATF historian, Pete. Right, what the work that your generation did for my generation, you guys set the foundation. Right,
we were
no
undercover
program. Right, there is no undercover program. If you guys don't do what you do, and right, it's a natural evolution of things, right? And we had smart guys like John Cooper and Kim Baylog and Frank Delisio who, right, built that undercover program, which, as you know, right, the more comfortable you feel, the better off you're going to be, and the more believable you're going to be, right? And I had zero qualms about giving police officers my undercover ID, and I said, hey, investigate till the cows come home. I'm who I say I am, and I had 100% certainty that they were going to come back and not find anything, which right. If you have peace, as you guys know, if you have peace of mind as a UC, that is devastating to the bad guys in an investigation.
Oh, you got to be comfortable in your role. You can't be something you're not. You've got to be comfortable in your role. That's like the first law of undercover work.
Carlos, what was the attitude of the Puerto Rico Police Department after you take off? How many guys did you take down? 6, 8, 10 guys?
We took off 5, but we left a lot in the field, right? Because we knew that these guys knew more cops that were dirty. We didn't identify them because I pulled this nonsense.
Yeah.
And we got found out, but hey, Puerto Rico Police Department, those guys and gals, they're all heart, man, right? Yeah. They get after it. And this case was brought to us by them, right? You guys know this. We don't, Pete, you were talking about this earlier, right? All these guys were bad guys with badges, right?
Yeah.
At some point, they decided that oath that they took meant nothing, and all they were was bad guys with badges. And I remember thinking, you know what? These guys are going to radio calls, right? These guys are going to someone's mom's house. They're stopping your sister on the street on a traffic stop, whatever, right? These guys had infiltrated the Puerto Rico Police Department, and these guys were nothing but crooks with badges. And
who knows what else they did? Who knows what else they did? What other damage they did?
There was some talk, and we could never prove this. On one of the deals, they were talking about they went camping and they set off a gigantic forest fire. But we could never prove that it was them, right? But they were talking about it. I also didn't show there, but I bought a stolen AR-15 rifle from one of those guys.
Wow.
Jesus.
Right? And you know how at first it was a hard time trying to identify these guys, looking at, right? I mean, I'm trying to look at their badges, but you know how that goes.
Yeah.
How we identified one of them was when he gave me the rifle, he wrapped it in his police jacket with his name on it. And another Inspector Clouseau moment.
Yeah, there you go. Good grief.
Right?
Well, I think somebody wants to talk to you. Before we do that, what impact did this have on your personal life?
Ooh, that's a whole nother show, right? I'll tell you, I don't mind telling you this, right? You guys, you're like my dad, for Christ's sake. So my professional life, and George could tell you, George.
You're not going to make us cry or anything now,
no,
are you?
I'm just telling you, and I'm not the only one, right? I mean, look, my personal life was a shit show, right? My professional life was awesome. Right? But my personal life was a complete shit show. And so, right, thank God, right, that God loves idiots and ATF agents and
drunks. Don't forget drunks.
And drunks, right. And around this time, I was introduced to my current wife. Dude, if that doesn't happen, I would have been fired the way I was going, I would have been fired by ATF. No, zero doubt in my mind about that.
She made you an honest man.
Yeah, right. I mean, well, no, she gave me hope, right? I decided, hey, do you want to turn out to, and you guys, right? We've seen this before, right? We've seen good guys because of the job, lack of discipline, woe is me type of nonsense, burn down their private life, and to the point where they eat their gun or they get fired, right? I was on the fast track to that. And by sheer luck, I met my wife, and I made a hard decision, right? Do I want to continue down the path to nowhere, or do I want to take some responsibility for my actions and try to do something about this? And that's what I did, with a lot of help from guys like George and a lot of people who were looking out for me, guiding me along the way. Right, I was able to turn it around and I kind of did a hard 90-degree turn and went the other way, right? I became an ATF supervisor, right? And
I think it's admirable that you would attribute that to meeting your wife. She must be a very special person, and I'm sure that every wife listening to this is beaming with pride hearing you say what you just said.
Now, right? I don't think she. On some days, she rues the day that we were introduced, but
yeah, they all go to the same school, Carlos.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
But yeah, I mean that's what was happening, man. And George could tell you, man, I was out of control.
There were some moments.
Hey, Carlo. We were sort of drawing straws for who was going to be on the program tonight. It couldn't be all three of us interviewing you, so I drew the shortest straw, so I got to miss out. But sitting here listening, the only thing we're missing is some cigars. Great story, and I could tell there's a lot more to these stories as well. Actually, I know there is. But thanks for coming on, and thanks for sharing your story with us, and thanks for being a friend. And
hey, on all seriousness, I appreciate all you guys and everything you guys have done for me. I would like the opportunity to come back and talk about crime gun intelligence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something that I call both Pete and Ray literally 2 or 3 times a day, asking all sorts of questions. And I appreciate you guys' patience with me. And I think crime gun intelligence is the future of policing.
Well, I think I think that's a great suggestion, and I think we'd be remiss if we don't mention that the critical role, now that you're retired, that you're playing in crime gun intelligence with your new gig, your new employer. Maybe you might want to take a minute to talk about the very unique piece of crime gun intelligence that you're the expert in now.
Oh, I work for a great company. I don't say that because I work. You guys know that I have zero filter, which is kind of gets me in trouble a lot of the times. But I work for a great company, and that company is called ShotSpotter, and I'm a part of a team of retired law enforcement executives and intel analysts that help police departments who are our clients with their gun violence problem, and it's a fantastic company to work for, and a lot of smart people, a lot of very passionate people that want to give back, want to still be of service to the community, but from the private sector. And we are heading into that crime gun intelligence lane here coming up, and I think it's a move in the right direction, and I think we'll be able to help out a lot of these police departments and the communities that are suffering from this very real gun violence problem that's plaguing our country and has been plaguing our country. So I'm fortunate. I'm just fortunate I landed on my feet after retirement, and I'm fortunate that I work at a great place with a really lot of great people.
You know, I think it's a good idea you come back and talk about that. I think we need to let the public know that what ShotSpotter does when it comes to gunfire out on the street outside your bedroom window. ShotSpotter calls the cops when nobody else does.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. It's a fantastic technology. When used correctly, you can have a huge impact on your community's gun violence problem.
Outstanding.
Yep.
Well, I think that's a wrap. And you thought you'd only be able to talk for 5 minutes, and we're just at an hour. Wow. Imagine that.
Well, you can edit it down to 7 minutes.
Hey, you know what? I know we're breaking here, but did you tell the story? Because I've been trying to work some controls here. Did you tell the story about these pictures? I don't remember if you did.
I did not. So right.
Just finish up with that, because we're only keeping Pete from dinner, which is awesome. Okay.
So God also has.
You're gonna pay for this. I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna pay for this.
I was telling George, right? God has a great sense of humor. The picture on my left, on the left, when you're looking at the screen, right? That picture was taken during this police corruption case, right? That was in one of the supervisor's offices in Puerto Rico. That's what I looked like during that case. I was a street agent there. That was sometime in the spring of 2005. The picture on the right was taken sometime in 2016, and that I was a special agent in charge of the Miami Field Division. Puerto Rico falls under the Miami Field Division. So, what's that? 11 years. 11 years later, I come back and I head up the same field division where I worked that undercover case. And George and I were laughing earlier. That guy on the left, if there was a contest at ATF pick the guy that will never, ever get into any kind of leadership role at ATF. Right, George? The guy on the left I would have put all my money on that guy.
Yeah, I would argue before we say goodnight, the guy on the left would not become a supervisor, but that guy on the left, he's a leader. No doubt in my military mind whatsoever, brother. And you are a leader. As a case agent, as a group soup, as a SAC, and as a dad, I could always count on your leadership. So I understand about being a supervisor, but you're a leader, brother. No doubt about it. And with that, I love you, man. Good night.
You know, real quick, I don't know if you remember this, George, but we were in Colorado Springs when remember that?
Yeah.
When I found out that I had been promoted to a special agent in charge, George and I were eating bad eggs at some hotel in Colorado Springs when Tommy Brandon came to me and said, "Hey, congratulations, you've gotten your senior executive service certification."
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Good night, sir. Pete, final words. Let's break it here so you can go eat.
This was his story tonight about not a special agent, a very special agent, Carlos Canino. One of the best, one of the icons of ATF. We love you, bud.
Love you.
Good night.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Talk to you
Stay
guys
safe,
later.
brother.
Yep, you too.